Our final speaker you may recognise, he's often at the front of the demonstrations. Fantastic activist, Holocaust survivor, Stephen Kapos. Thank you, Stephen.
I apologize, I have to improvise because I somehow lost my speech. Anyway, as was said, I am from Hungary, Budapest, and I was a 7-year-old child when the Nazi invasion reached Budapest, and the Holocaust started in a serious way. And as I am from Hungary, and Hungary at various times in history did have some connection to being an imperial power along with Austria. I thought I'd just give a little historical background about Hungary as well, if it's not too much of a digression. First of all, the Magyar tribes who invaded Hungary from the east were a nomadic, warlike people who conquered the so-called Carpathian Basin, which is defined by the Carpathian Mountains, where they found peaceful agricultural Slav people whom they conquered and enslaved immediately. So Hungary, in a way, the foundation of Hungary was also a colonial settler project. The warlike Hungarians then, for 100 years, over 100 years, were marauding like a bit sort of Viking-like, attacking the surrounding settled European Christian states, and they were robbing, pillaging, burning, and murdering everywhere. And when they were finally defeated, they settled down to Christianity and became Christian monarchy since about 1001. And so there is this rather violent beginning, and interestingly, when Hungary was embracing fascism in the 1940s, the Hungarian Fascist Party, the Arrow Cross, reached back to this violent pagan past in a similar way to the Italians and also the Germans themselves, and glorified this violence and pagan period. Hungary had a brush with being an imperial power when, during the so-called dualism, they had a pact with Austria to found the Austro-Hungarian Empire to dominate all the ethnic people around them. And so it was really sort of mini-empire, initially, the historic Hungary, and later a much larger, significant Central European empire, the Austro-Hungary Empire. They dominated and suppressed a whole host of peoples around them. What is today's Slovakia, parts of Ukraine, the Romanians and Saxons of Transylvania, further south, a fair degree of Serbia, and about half of Croatia, right down to the Dalmatian coasts. So Hungary, as Austria-Hungary entered the First World War, and although the actual triggering of the war was the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke, in Sarajevo, the real reason was an imperial intention of further expansion into the Balkans and conquering Serbia and Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina, etc. So it was a proper imperial ambition. However, they were defeated, as was Germany, with which they were allied. And then, very briefly, there was anarchy, the collapse of monarchy, and by that time, capitalism developed sufficiently that there were working and middle classes who could take power, and they did, and particularly by the leading party, which was the Communist Party. And there was a brief period of a sort of Hungarian Soviet rule for a few months. Only for a few months, because very promptly the Western imperial powers sponsored military attack by Romania and Slovakia, and the Hungarian brief communist power was extinguished. And the same imperial powers sponsored the right-wing Hungarian forces who produced a militia led by Admiral Horthy, who became a dictator from that day on to right up to 1944, October 1944, when the Germans arrested him as an unreliable ally. Until then, he was quite happy to join Hitler in attacking the Soviet Union against the promise of receipt of the so-called lost territories, which Hungary lost after the First World War and the Trianon Peace Treaty. It's interesting that during the Austro-Hungarian rule, particularly led by the Habsburgs, there was no serious anti-Semitism, just something that was kept in the background, because it was realized that the Jews were a very useful contributors to developing out of feudalism and establishing capitalism. So consequently, there was no serious influence in Hungary of the Zionists. There was no live Zionist project of any significance, because of this intention to put the emphasis on integration rather than anything to do with establishing a Jewish state in Palestine. So I think the first really violent anti-Semitic pogroms were perpetrated by the fascist forces who conquered the communist, brief communist state, which produced a hunt for the communists as well as violent pogrom against Jews in Hungary for the first time. The only serious Zionist influence later, during World War II, was by the influence of Kastner, Rudolf Kastner, who was a prominent Transylvanian Zionist who had a devil's pact with the Nazis to save a certain number of about 1,600 Hungarian, mostly Transylvanian Jews, against the delivery of various goods and money, but most importantly, against the promise of not informing the Hungarian Jews of Transylvania, particularly, about the death camps, which became just about known by them. This withholding of the information about the death camps actually impacted on my own family, because a big branch of the family who lived in Transylvania were offered escape into Romania, somewhat risky escape, but they turned it down because they were not aware of the full dangers. And as a result, the whole branch of the family was transported to Auschwitz, and about 10 of them, aunts, uncles, cousins, died there. So we had this direct experience of fascism, which was extremely violent in Hungary. The Arrow Cross troops, which were kind of fascist militia, for example, attacked a hospital near where I was in hiding on false papers, and they massacred the whole Jewish hospital. All the doctors, nurses, and patients, about 160 people died in 2 hours, being executed in the courtyards. So I just want to emphasize this connection between imperialism and the rise of fascism and the violence it creates. And this particular violence against the hospital, as many other similar things, rhyme in my mind with the suffering of Gaza, where about 36 hospitals have been attacked and atrocities committed against them, and in some of them there were actual massacres. I think I will finish with that. And, I thank Dr. Ward for giving this opportunity and express solidarity with the people of Palestine and Gaza in particular.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's now up to you guys to come